All right, welcome to week 10. If you're watching this video, it's because you are in my English 11 class and you are gone at some point this week, or you just miss me so much and want to watch this video. Just kidding. Okay, this is week 11. So I'm going to try to keep this as in order as possible. The last 2 weeks were kind of crazy because there was a week or a day last week where I was gone for fourth period, and then the week prior, there was a day that I missed fifth and sixth. And so I'm trying to keep us all on track, which is very difficult when it's split between A and B days. But this is the plan for A day people, which is fourth period. We're going to have guest speakers come on Monday. For my fifth and sixth, we're going to have the guest speaker on Thursday. It just worked out better for her schedule to come that way. So that means we kind of have to flip flop a few things. We are going to be starting The Great Gatsby this week while also working on finishing our persuasive paper. So for fourth period, you are going to you will not be reading the first chapter until Friday, but fifth and sixth, you will get to read that on or I'm hoping to finish the whole thing because it just takes about 30 minutes on Tuesday. And then you will have the guest speaker on Thursday. So you can take a look at that, see where you're at. If you were gone on this day, I hope you're not because it's going to be so amazing. I have two friends, Chelsea Llewellyn and Anna Rivera, who are nurses. Chelsea is a labor and delivery nurse at the Salem Hospital, and she has been so for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And then my friend Anna is currently in nursing school. She's almost done, but she is not only in nursing school at George Fox, but she is working at the hospital in the oncology center. So they're going to come in and talk about their careers, their college experience, and you're going to be able to take some notes and learn from them. So to start off, you need to answer this warm-up prompt. Describe a time when something was hyped up for you. Typically, in this scenario, it's going to be like a movie, a TV show, or some sort of product or thing. People were telling you about this and hyping it up about how amazing it was, and then you watch the movie or show, or you get the thing, and it's just not like what you thought it would be. I want you to describe that experience in the box below. So, the reason that I'm asking you this question is because we are going to be starting The Great Gatsby this week. And The Great Gatsby is considered to be an American classic. It's actually almost 100 years old. This book is now, believe it or not, that old. The book was published in 1925 and has been taught in American schools for, as long as I can remember. It was definitely taught when I was in high school, although at my school I didn't get to read it. That's a story for a different day. So the reason I had you answer that question before is because I want you to think about how there are certain things in school that we kind of have like preconceived ideas as to what it's going to be like, or even preconceived opinions on whether we're going to love it or not. And The Great Gatsby might be one of those things for you, but I want you to enter this unit with an open mind and an open perspective. Yes, the book is very old and some of the language is old and hard to understand, but it's actually such an amazing story. It's very interesting and it brings up a lot of themes and topics that I think are still relevant to today. So we're going to do our best to approach everything with an open mind. So before we start reading, before we start doing anything, I want you to tell me anything and everything you know about The Great Gatsby. Literally anything. If you know absolutely nothing about it, you've never heard it before, write that down in the box below. If you know something, maybe you've read it before, maybe you've seen the movie, tell me anything and everything you do know about The Great Gatsby right here. So this part of the slides, you could still do because I'll probably keep the pictures up for a while, but we're going to be doing a gallery walk where there will be pictures up around the room and you need to go around and look at them all and make some observations and tell me what you can infer or guess based off the observations that you made. I noticed blank in all the pictures. I think this because this. So you're going to write down a few notes. And then I'm not going to play it in this video, but we are going to watch the trailer so that you can kind of get an idea of what the story's about. And then I'll explain after. So here are the characters that we are going to be looking at. We have Jay Gatsby, Daisy Buchanan, Nick Carraway, Tom Buchanan, Jordan Baker, George Wilson, and Myrtle Wilson. Myrtle and George are married. Jordan is the friend of Daisy. Daisy and Tom are married, and Nick is Daisy's cousin. Jay Gatsby and Nick are neighbors. So that's kind of beginning overview of that. In the story, they're going to talk about West Egg and East Egg. They're talking about these parts of Long Island in New York, because that's where the story takes place. And then there's this bay in between them. So Gatsby and Nick live in West Egg, and the East Egg is kind of like the fancier, more expensive, wealthy part of Long Island. And that's where the Buchanan lives. And you can see from Gatsby's mansion, you can look across the water and see the Buchanan's house, their mansion, and then the green light, which we'll talk about. They're also going to mention the Valley of Ashes. This is first brought up in chapter 2. And so in order to get to the Buchanans or to Gatsby's house, you have to drive around like a U. So you always pass this in order to get to one or the other's house. So as we read our book, we need to answer our essential question. And this is going to be an essential question that's more like a question to ask out of curiosity. It's not necessarily directly, the question itself isn't directly connected to the standards, because that's what the standards represent. So we're going to answer this question throughout and then definitely by the end of the book. And that is love enough? Is love enough to be content in life? There are many, many different themes that you will see pop up in this book. Traditionally, a lot of teachers will teach The Great Gatsby by talking about the American dream, and we'll definitely touch on that, but I wanted to make our main focus through the lens of this question. Is love enough to be content in life? Because you'll see it's one of the biggest things that Gatsby struggles with in the book. So as we read, there are two things that we're going to go through in this unit. Two things we're going to analyze. We're going to analyze the text, the book itself, and then we're going to also be watching the film and analyzing that. With the text, we're going to look at symbolism and language and plot and themes. We're going to answer our essential question and work on completing some standards through reading and writing. And then when looking at the film, we're going to look at how the novel is portrayed through the medium of film and what specific choices the director and producers made in taking something that was originally a novel and turning it into a movie. But before we get to reading, before we get to watching the movie, we are going to get some background context. That's going to be a lot of what this week is getting some foundational things set in place. I by no means am a history teacher, but I have talked to two history teachers, Miss Ratzliff and my husband, who majored in social studies. I've talked to them and they gave me lots of good information to kind of help give some background context as to what life was like 100 years ago in the 1920s. So some of this you will take notes on, some of it is just for you to watch. First, we have the Prohibition. This is super important because it takes place during Gatsby. The Great Gatsby was published in 1925, but the story itself takes place in 1922, which is exactly 100 years from right now. And the Prohibition was when the 18th Amendment was passed, it banned the manufacture and transportation and sale of intoxicating liquors, which is alcohol. So alcohol was not allowed to be bought, distributed, or consumed. It was illegal, and that was for quite a long time. That was from 1920 to 1933. So at this point in Gatsby, the Prohibition had existed for 2 years. Another thing to consider is the timeline, which we'll talk about. The economic boom of the 20s was massive. World War I was 1914 to 1918. So we're coming into the 20s. It's a new decade, a new era, and America was thriving economically. There it is. There were a lot of inventions and new products to make life easier, which gave more time for leisure. with the invention of the Ford Model T and just developing in cars, automobiles, it gave you the opportunity to travel places that you probably wouldn't have gone before, or just increasing the likelihood of doing that on a day-to-day basis. And then it also started the golden age of Hollywood. So to give you a timeline, World War I, like I said, was 1914 to 1918. The Great Gatsby takes place in 1922. The Great Depression, which followed that economic boom of the 20s and the crash of the economy, was 1929 to 1939. And then we've got 1939 to 1945 was World War II. So to give you an idea of what life was like at this time, I Googled a few things. I did some research to kind of put things into perspective for you. So the year is 1922. In 1922, air conditioning had only existed for 20 years. But even if it had been around for 20 years, it's not like what we know it is today when it's July and it's like 90 degrees outside and you walk into Target and the cool air hits you. It was not like that. Air conditioning was very expensive to have in your home and just not as readily available, but it was in existence, but barely. Women at this point had only been able to vote for 2 years, and that would be white women only. Traffic lights had only existed for 10 years, meaning who knows what the infrastructure system looked like before then. The Ford Model T was invented 14 years ago, and at this point, cars were becoming much more accessible and frequent to use. Which, speaking of, convertibles were brand new in 1922, which you will see in the movie and in the book. The cheeseburger was not even invented yet. It would technically be invented 2 years later. Birth control pills were invented, or they weren't invented / available for another 38 years. The reason I bring this up is because you'll see in the video that we're going to watch, there was a massive shift in life socially, culturally for women. I wouldn't really say that the feminist movement started quite yet. I mean, maybe it did with the suffragettes, but this definitely you'll find is connected to what we're going to talk about. TV wouldn't be invented for 5 more years, but not common until 30 years later, around the 50s. Walt Disney was 21 in 1922, and Disneyland would not exist for another 33 years. I had to do some very rough math on this, but Drake's grandparents wouldn't be born for another 20 years. His grandparents, not even his parents, but his grandparents were not born yet. The Portland Trail Blazers would yet to exist for another 48 years. North Salem High School, which is the oldest high school in Salem-Keizer, had been around for 16 years, while West Salem High School would not exist for another 80 years. So, to give you a little bit more help with trying to understand what life was like during the time of Great Gatsby, you are going to watch this video. You only need to watch till 9 minutes and 30 seconds in because the rest is just kind of repetitive. But you're going to watch this video and then answer these questions. What kind of inventions changed the way people lived during this decade? What changed with the culture for women and how they lived? And anything else that you noticed in the video. Okay, and then to conclude the first day of the week, we are going to have time to work on our persuasive essays. Your point number 1 paragraphs were due on Friday the 8th. Point number 2 should be done by Monday the 11th, and point number 3 needs to be done by Friday the 15th. If you are not done where you should be, if you're not starting point number 3, I mean, it's not, just talk to me and we can work something out, but we need to get rolling on this because we've been working on this for a long time and we broke it apart bit by bit, but it's time to get closer to working on revision. So when you submit these parts or when I go and grade them, they're each worth 5 points. If you are unhappy with the score that you got, your opportunity to revise that will happen when we hit peer revisions and you turn it into your final draft. So please don't freak out if you're not happy with the score that you got for your rough draft, it'll be revised. You'll have the opportunity to revise with the final draft. Okay, for my fifth and sixth period, we will be reading chapter 1 on Tuesday. Fourth period, you will not be reading it until Friday. So keep that in mind. After reading chapter 1, you need to go in and do a character report card. So you're going to look at what we have read in chapter 1 and give a grade for these character traits for each character and add some comments. So each box should be filled in some way. So you have Nick, Daisy, and Tom. We're just going to have those 3. And then you need to do a reflection. In your opinion, which character is the most likable and why? And in your opinion, so far, which character is the least likable and why? Okay, this part is just for my fourth period because I will have you on Wednesday. You were supposed to do this last week, but it was the day that I had to be gone for Abbott interviews, so I moved it to Wednesday because I really wanted to be here for it, and it'll just make it easier for you. So, story time. When I was in college, I had a moment in time where I was really fascinated by personality tests. I found out about one specifically called the Myers-Briggs. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. And I took it, and it was just really interesting to me to reflect on that and to like look at, wow, I had never thought about that, but that's totally true. Or I don't know if that's super true, but it's interesting. And I had a conversation with my grandma, who's pictured here. She's very close to me, somebody that's very important in my life. We had a conversation, and this is the point in time where I'm almost done with my time at Chemeketa Community College, and I hadn't quite decided what I wanted to do after in terms of a major. And she said, you know what? I think based off what you've told me about this test and who I know you to be and what you're interested in and what you're good at, I think you would be a really, really good language arts teacher. And it was like a light bulb moment for me. It changed everything. And lo and behold, I decided to pursue education after that conversation. And it ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made. So here's a speech for you, big sister speech. I'm going to have you take that Myers-Briggs test to help you use it, hopefully in the way that I did. I don't know if it'll reveal what your dream job will be, but it might bring you some more clarity on things. But here are some things that I want you to keep in mind before you do it. And again, this is just for fourth period because fifth and sixth, you already did this. Personality tests are meant to be a helpful tool for self-reflection, which reminds me of number 2. They do not define who you are, and they should not put you in a box. What I mean by that is sometimes, either subconsciously or we're maybe very well aware of it, we can get kind of carried away with these things and make everything revolve around our personality or what label you were given. And I just want to remind you that humans are a lot more complex than that. There's a lot more gray area than black and white. And so you should never put yourself in a box. Also, it's very easy to kind of give excuses for doing or not doing certain things based on the fact that it's your personality. So please don't do that. It's not going to help you in the long run. It's meant to be a tool for self-reflection. Also know that you're going to change and grow with time. The core of who you are might stay the same over your life. People have different opinions on that. I personally believe that, but you're going to grow and change because you are going to go through different experiences and meet new people, and you will change in some ways. So know that whatever you get from this test result right now, this point in time, it might be different 10 years from now. It might not be, and that's totally fine because that's kind of just how life goes. And then when you take the test, I want you to answer the questions honestly to get the most out of it, because otherwise it's not really going to serve you well. So this test is called the 16 personalities test, or Myers-Briggs. You are going to take the test. You're going to save your results. You will do that by it'll give you the option to send the results to your email. So you can just put your school email in, and then you're going to fill out this handout, which should look something like this after you fill it out. This is my example. You're going to fill it out and do some reflection that way. And on the back of your handout, you also need to answer these questions. So, fourth period, if you are gone on Wednesday when we do this, please let me know and I will explain it or show you, because it kind of can be a little bit confusing, but it's very fun and it's going to help us with things that we do in the future. So at this point in the slides in the video, we are at either Thursday or Friday, depending on your block schedule day. So my fifth and sixth period, our guest speaker will come on Thursday. Just like I said at the beginning of the video, her name's Chelsea Llewellyn, and she is a labor and delivery nurse. Also, for those of you that are pursuing honors credit, I'm going to have several options for you to pursue with the Gatsby unit. And the first one is going to be using Actively Learn to kind of get like a little background information on F. Scott Fitzgerald and his biography. So that is uploaded here in Canvas whenever you are ready. I think I set the due date to be the 22nd of April, so you have some time. Okay, this is going to be such a fun question to answer, I think. As a warm up question, I want you to rank the qualities in order of importance, one being the most important to you personally, and then 14 being the least, in terms of dating and pursuing love. So if you think about your life, romantic relationships, dating, trying to fall in love, you need to rank these things in order of importance for you personally. So you can literally just copy and paste right here, copy and paste and put it into the box that it belongs in. So this is going to be very fun. The reason I'm having you answer this question is because we will see the characters in our story. They all have a very different perspective on what is a priority to them and what matters. And I think it's fun to just make a personal connection. So answer that question for me. Rank these in order of priority and importance for you personally. You can put it into the box. And then what we're going to do with the film, instead of reading the entire book and then watching the film from start to finish, we're going to read a chapter and then watch the scenes from the film from that chapter. Read, watch, going back and forth. For both reading and watching, you will have questions to answer to practice the standards that we have for this unit. So for chapter 1 scenes, this will be about the first 15 minutes of the movie. You're going to answer these questions. Consider the film director's choice to begin the movie with Nick speaking directly to a psychiatrist. What effect does this choice have on the story? And then how does Nick feel and act during the dinner with the Buchanans? Use details from the film to support your explanation. And then we are going to end with some essay check-ins. So that is it for week 10. If you have questions, please let me know. Again, I tried to keep it as clear as possible with balancing A day and B day, but if you have questions, you can always ask.